Ben for the week, which is just large heart to fill as holding space for you all, but I will try and do my best. And I've also invited Marta in to facilitate this conversation. So we see a couple new faces, a couple returners. I'll start today in holding the space with just a couple of announcements. I'll also be keeping notes and making sure notes and the recording get transferred to Ben and put on our blog, which is on Retreat Center Collaboration website, and I will send that as well. So before we begin, hi everyone, good to see you. My name's Justine Johnson, the Associate Director at Kirkridge Retreat and Study Center in Bangor, Pennsylvania. If I haven't met you yet, hi. I also am supporting the Retreat Center collaboration in behind the scenes work mostly, and just making sure people are staying connected and we are seeing what is emerging and how we respond to that. The community calls that we hold on the second and fourth Tuesday are part of that. So if there is a topic that you want to discuss or see discussed, we love inviting facilitators in. When we close today, I'll let you know what's coming up in September. Diana, who is just speaking, will be part of our next community call. And then we'll look at what's emerging for our October schedule as well. The one thing Ben did want me to make sure to express is all RCC folks, anyone who comes to the community calls is welcome to register for healing circles to become a facilitator, to go through the training. I will put that in the chat as it starts soon, September 14th. It's 3 sessions and they are at no cost to the participants. That is something the Retreat Center collaboration was able to offer all of the Retreat Center staff who join these calls. So I'll just put that in the chat. And then I'll end with what's next for us and another reminder of the Healing Circles opportunity. Is there any other announcement that anyone else would like to make? You're invited if there's an announcement that you feel we could benefit from into this space, and then I'll transfer it to Marta. Diana?
So just a little thing on what we'll be doing at the next community call. Oren Salzberg and I are going to lead a session on scenario planning. We did some work with the steering committee of the Retreat Center collaboration back in June, trying to imagine the range of different ways the future could play out broadly in the world, and then what does that mean for retreat centers, and then specifically what does that mean for the Retreat Center collaborations, just a tool for managing through uncertainty, getting unstuck, and envisioning possibilities when the sort of sense of uncertainty can be paralyzing. So we're going to share a little bit about that as sort of a thinking process and tool that just might be helpful and supportive to you all as you're thinking about how do I make decisions when there's so much that's unknown, and how do I begin to sort of see some new and creative possibilities.
Thanks, Diana. So that call is September 8th. I put it in the chat box. I went through in support of the steering committee with those scenarios and found it incredibly valuable. 2 weeks ago when we last met, someone had put in the text box, I think there shouldn't be shame in us saying, we don't know if our retreat centers will make it through this crisis. How do we hold each other in that process? And I think this is one step towards saying, what are the realities? What are the hopeful opportunities, and what are the serious realities of these spaces moving forward? So I'm looking forward to the call. Thanks, Diana. Anything else? I'm not seeing hands up, so I'm going to transition into really the bulk of our conversation today, which is about utilizing resources, diversifying revenue, and looking to our own communities, whether that be volunteers, interns, and supporters, and how to ensure we're into those hopeful opportunities. A couple months ago at this point, Marta had said, have we talked about diversifying revenues? And I said, no, and would you like to help lead that conversation? So if you volunteer with me, I'm going to rope you in, just a heads up in the future. So I'm really excited to hear another voice in this space. Marta, I hope you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Whidbey Institute, and then we'll go into, she's volunteered to share what they've been doing, give us some prompts to work in small groups, come back to larger groups if there was a nugget of information we wanted to share. And then we'll do that again. So really 2 main topics that Marta will set up for us.
Thank you, Justine. Hi, everyone.
No.
It's a real treat to be able to facilitate a conversation, having been on so many wonderful ones on these calls. So I'll just start with, I'm in charge of volunteer engagement at the Whidbey Institute. Title from volunteer coordinator to volunteer engagement. I just think it sounds more inclusive. And being self-organized at the Whidbey Institute, we also all have multiple roles in other areas. I've been trying to stay on top of the COVID health role at the Whidbey Institute and help facilitate things related with that, as we have had a few groups just this past weekend, but that's another topic. The Whidbey Institute is in Clinton, Washington on Whidbey Island. And it's almost 50 years old. We'll be having our 50th year anniversary in a few years. So starting to plan for that, hoping that we can have people in person. Let's see, I'm not sure how familiar you are. I know we've been on these calls for a while. I won't go too much into the Whidbey Institute. We're a retreat center, we're a nonprofit with a retreat center is how we like to state ourselves. We contract with program leaders, so we don't actually lead programs ourselves. Program leaders bring their groups in and we have them on our website so people can register through our website or through the program leader. And they need to be in alignment with our mission. We have wonderful groups that come back every year and have multiple sessions, and that we've been trying to facilitate having more of those. And of course, right now, who knows? So I wanted to start with a quote. Actually, I had a few, I couldn't decide which one to choose. I like to put a quote on the volunteer newsletters that I send out. So one of the ones I really like is, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give," by Khalil Gibran. And another one I have liked that I sent out recently: "Just for these times, when the great ship is in harbor and moored, it is safe, there can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for." And that's by Clarissa Pinkola. Volunteers, maybe they're known as supporters, or as Justine was said, program associates. Anyway, we include people who give of their time with our organizations, whatever label or whatever title we give them. And to have a conversation, and I know there have been other conversations in these calls, but to focus on how creating relationships and connectedness, how do we hold spaces for our volunteers and widen our circles, which can also bring in diversity and inclusion, creating access and affordability. All of these topics, of course, are included in this. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing with volunteers. At the beginning of COVID, we lost our land steward, who's vital to keeping our land and our trails maintained. He chose to just focus on other things in his life and stay closer to home. So we we implemented a program called Adopt a Trail. We have 4 miles of trails that are open to the public at any time. We don't allow dogs or other pets on the trails, but open to people walking. And so we have a program, Adopt a Trail. We posted a map in one of our outbuildings so anyone can access it. And I've let the word out to volunteers and staff know that they are welcome to come look at the map and choose a section of the map, walk the trails, choose what section they want, and then mark it on the map, and then they can care for the trail on their own time, which has been a great thing. People have really enjoyed that. I can meet them there and show them just how we do trail maintenance, pulling blackberries and throwing them off the trail. And of course, this applies to us. We have 106 acres, so we do have a lot to maintain. But that's been a really nice way to involve people. They can come on their own time. They can be on the trail by themselves. They can bring a friend. They can do it with their family, however they feel comfortable with that. And it's really helped. It's been a huge help to us, because otherwise we really do need to pay somebody to maintain the trails that people use. They grow over quickly. So that's been one way we've brought in more support and involved people. We have a big garden where vegetables and medicinal plants are grown. We have a West Garden steward. It's called the West Garden. And we have work parties every week. So when COVID started, of course, we didn't have any work parties, but then it's all outside. It's a big space. People can come in, they can wear masks or not because we stay very far apart. And so we've started having more and more volunteers. And interesting, during this time, I've had a lot more requests from new people to volunteer at the Whidbey Institute. Some other ways using having volunteers help out. Someone contacted us wanting to learn about retreat centers and how to manage a retreat center. So even though we don't have programs going on, this man has come and he's been living in one of our buildings because we don't need the space right now for programs. He's been living there. He's been an amazing help to our caretaker and our West Garden steward and our facilities manager. He helps in all kinds of ways. I track his volunteer hours, and it's a trade for room right now. He takes care of his own food, and he's learning ways of maintaining a retreat center. So he's there for a few months. This is kind of an unusual situation, but we wouldn't have been able to house him had we had our programs open at this time. So there's the long-term intern, and we also have a couple of long-term volunteers who've been coming to us for years, one of whom is local on Whidbey Island and maintains our other garden, which is called the Apple Tree Garden. In fact, we call it Mara's Garden. She's been with us, I believe, for 8 or 10 years. And as a volunteer coordinator or engagement, I communicate with her mostly, but she's been teaching some classes there in the past, and it's kind of her domain. We just let her have full reign. She's got a budget, and she comes and goes as she pleases and maintains a beautiful space with a big apple tree in the center and plants from all over the world, because she has her background in working in landscaping and plants. And then another long-term volunteer we have is a man who comes from Eastern Washington. He'll come over and, coordinate when he can stay for 4 to 6 days at a time. And he does everything from take down trees, build trails, fix the plumbing, fix the irrigation. He's a do-it-all person, but he's an arborist by trade. So he's been invaluable. But I think what both Bob and Mara feel about the Whidbey Institute is that they belong. They really feel like it's part of their home. Bob will say that a lot. And for us, they're part of our team. I don't see what we would do without them. So that cultivating that sense of belonging with a long-term supporter has been really special for us. We have other supporters, as I'm sure you all do, who help from time to time and have been there throughout the duration of the Whidbey Institute. But these two people are able and choose to spend a lot of their time on the land helping out. Let's see. And then I wanted to share something from our fundraising coordinator. I reached out to her because this call isn't particularly about fundraising, it's about utilizing our resources in other ways. But she asked that I share that when we first went into quarantine, we invited our major donors to gather on Zoom just to share how everyone was adjusting to this time and have discussion. And we've been holding gatherings once a month. So we had one in April and May and June. They were well attended, and the group has wanted to learn more about what we're doing with equity and social justice, which has been a big focus for us. And also they've offered to host online gatherings in support of us as fundraisers. We haven't taken them up on that right now because we're not doing any online work, but it's been an offer for them. So we've been in dialogue about that. And we're planning another gathering in September for the group. So I'll stop talking about that. Those are just some of the ways we've been finding to bring in volunteers and supporters. And wanted to ask a couple questions from you all as you go into breakout rooms. And Justine will post these, one of which is, how do we include and cultivate supportive community members and offer them a sense of belonging? And another question, and how are you all practicing partnerships with volunteers, interns, organizations, maybe bartering or paid work? What other ways have your organizations found to support relationship building? So and I know there are many, many ways, and I would love to hear more about what you all are doing, as you've touched on in other calls. So using this as a time for resourcing us as well. Let me know if you have any questions.
Marta, there was one before we set up the small breakout rooms about your trails. If you could talk a little bit more about how you help people maintain them. And then there was a specific one about what are your actual trails? Are they dirt, rock?
Good question. They are dirt. Yep, so they're just forest trails. They go all around the lands. They go up, they go down through the forests. We have a couple through wetland where we have a little boardwalk. We have a couple little bridges. So those are dirt, and we mostly have blackberries, ferns, salmonberry, all the things that grow into the trails. So we need those pushed back from the trails, and we have specific ways of doing that, which aren't hard. But if somebody's new to trail maintenance, I always show them and give them some an overview of what we do, how we throw things beyond so people can't see, how we try to create a look that seems like no one's been there. It's just the forest, but it's actually, you know, pushing back the trails, because we have a lot of community members who run on the trails and just enjoy walking on them. Any other questions right now?
Just a question relative to if we go into these small groups. Our concern here at our space would be we would have to have it be exterior, and we don't have outbuildings where people can stay. So the COVID question rises up in terms of being sure we're protecting staff who live in. So anybody who would comment on that as well would be helpful.
Sure. And maybe some others can speak to that better. I will just say we do have a lot of outdoor space, but our caretaker did not want anyone on the land except, you know, staff members who were maintaining spaces for quite a while. I mean, and other staff agreed as well. You know, we just laid really low, as I'm sure all of you did too during the first months of COVID. But we do have the diversity of having the other spaces people can stay. We have a number of little cabins, and then and some kitchens people can use.
Margaret, I think that's a great question to ask in our small breakout space too. I think about that. A couple calls ago, someone had said, you know, we're doing an adopt a garden, because that's what we're working with. And I know some have really small confined spaces, so they've invited volunteers in to facilitate conversations or manage their social media. So again, it's a question that is so specific to your space, but I think Marta set us up really well to say, here's like all of the possibilities we've dreamed into, and invite us to do the same, knowing that we are the experts of our space, and that we're all knowers and learners. So I think we will transition into small groups so you can ask those specific questions or at least bounce ideas off. Marta probably knows this better than anyone with her title, that volunteers take a lot of investment. So really, how do we broaden this into creating long-lasting relationships with community members who can support us in a multitude of ways? It's an add-on after hearing Marta talk about her relationships. So I'm just going to, I put the questions in the chat that Marta said. I'm thankful for her devising those questions to be really open, inviting. You are going to get a pop-up of a breakout room. I hope you join that space. You'll have about 20 minutes with 3 or 4 other people, and then we'll come back and Marta will ask you to almost kind of do a share back or report back as we go into the space. Are there any questions before I send you all off?
I'll just say one more thing. Thanks, Justine. That we have an open Zoom call every Wednesday for an hour that anyone can join. We've reached out for the volunteers to, you know, offer that to, or any community member. And during the first few months of COVID, I wrote letters and sent. We have a fern sticker that says Whidbey Institute. The fern is our little logo. I sent that out to our volunteers with notes. Just I really realized even more so during COVID how much I care about the relationships with the volunteers and how they've grown over time. And I did want to know how they were doing. So I've reached out via email. I've had some phone calls with people. So I did want to say, just in cultivating the resources of having help, it's such cultivating the relationships as well, and how I know people come to the Whidbey Institute because they love the land, but also because they feel like they belong somewhere. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm going to send everyone off for about 20 minutes, and then I'll put a 5-minute heads up and see you all back in the large room soon.
Welcome back. I'm looking forward to hearing some of the ideas that you generated. And I also wanted to just tell a little bit more about the Whidbey Institute. I was realizing maybe some of you don't really have an idea of our size and kind of how we're set up. As I was saying, we're on 106 acres, but we have a heartland area where we have most of our buildings, and then a lot of our land is in land trust right now. So we have a building envelope. The 4 miles of trails go all around the whole area. On the land up toward the road, we have a really long dirt road that goes up to the Whidbey Institute. On the land toward the road, we have a Waldorf school. They have a Waldorf school, but the Waldorf school has contracted for 99 years of renting the land from us, that space. So it's been a really beautiful partnership. On the land, in the last few years, we had 11 cabins put on with some bathrooms. So most of those are double occupancy, which really increased our bed space to, I believe, 46 beds. Before that, we had a few small cabins and then 2 bigger houses, which we call the farmhouse and grannies, that sleep multiple people, share kitchen, share bathroom. And in the last 4 years, we've been in the process of a build-out campaign. The cabins were part of that. A new caretaker cabin, which is almost done, which we've continued through this COVID time because our caretaker was in desperate need of a new home. So that's been built, and we're also, we started clearing the land for another common house, which will have a kitchen in it, so that we can have several retreats running at the same time, and a retreat can they can do their own food and have their own space in that common house space. We have a chef who contracts with us, and she uses the big kitchen in Thomas Berry Hall, which is our large building where our offices and our great hall are, and our dining room. And she does mostly vegan food. She cooks for the retreats, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And a lot of people, I think for them, the food is the highlight of their time there. She's a really wonderful cook. So I'll stop there. That's kind of a little overview. And I would love to hear any suggestions, ideas, discussions that you all talked about, bringing in support, community members, volunteers.
I'll start from our group. I'm Susan from the Naramata Center in the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia, Canada. I'll throw in that. I was sharing what we do here at the Naramata Center, and then also, what some of our challenges are. So we have 2 main volunteer programs that we run each year called Hearts and Hands, and it's the spring and the fall. We have 23 acres. So we invite volunteers to come and stay on site. And as part of staying on site, then they help us wake up our gardens for the spring and put our beds to sleep for the fall. And the program's been going on for a number of years, really successful. Most of the people that come to volunteer also then come during the summer or participate with us in other ways. So we continued that in the spring of this year. Even under COVID, we managed to ensure that everybody had their own space, everybody had their own tools, so there was no sharing of tools. We had COVID places set up around the site. So we were really lucky we could do that. But during the summer, with the world upside down, we didn't offer any volunteer opportunities because there was just so much else stuff going on that we had to figure out. And we didn't actually think anything of it. We thought, okay, well, we're not putting this out. Actually, we didn't even think about it. It was just so much stuff going on. And we realized our survey participants, when they were writing in, their responses to the summer, when we send out the "How was your stay?", how many people actually said, "We really wish there'd been volunteer opportunities for us. We missed them from the previous year." So we thought, wow, that's really interesting. Here we were thinking, oh, we're just going to give the whole thing a break and just let people, enjoy their time and retreat because life has been stressful enough. And they were expecting that. So it reinforced to us the importance of engagement with volunteers, and that people that come to our centers really want and are looking for that sense of belonging all of the time. So I talked about that a little bit, and then we all shared our are common concerns around volunteer management. So when you have a small staff, how do you manage the volunteers? How do you keep them engaged? You know, what are the risks and the liabilities associated with that? You know, the policies. It could be, it's a whole section of a business into itself, and which needs to be named and needs to have a plan around it. So focusing on that is time taking at the best of times, but during COVID, it's, you know, we have even less time. So that's, I don't know if anybody else from our group wants to add anything, but that was kind of our takeaway, I think.
Thank you. I just want to say we have a volunteer days, which is similar, where we have multiple days, which we have not had since COVID, but I love your title. I think we could be more creative with our title instead of volunteer days, something that's more bringing people in, like
warm. Yeah, thanks.
Warm.
Yeah.
Yes.
You can't just say no when I want to.
I think I hear Emily's child in the background, maybe. And
Sorry.
it also sounded like someone's tea was going off. I don't know if anyone else was that, but if we could just, oh, thanks, Emily. We always want your daughter to participate in the community calls.
I actually, Justine, I'm sorry to just jump in here, but I know like the importance of knowing to cultivate relationships, whether that be with program participants or just, you know, your own team, or in this case, we're talking about volunteers. And I know that Susan mentioned that that there was volunteers who were almost expecting kind of to hear back during this time. And I know that maybe some centers rely, or not necessarily rely wouldn't be the correct word, but use a lot of volunteer work during this time. I'm curious to know, just pure curiosity, by show of hands, how many of the centers have actually gathered new volunteers in the middle of COVID? Because I know that there's some that are almost expecting to kind of come back or to hear. Anyone have experience on new volunteers? Okay, thank you.
And to tag on to that question, I'm curious of those people, because I know for us, I haven't done outreach during this time, but we have a place you can sign up on the website, and I get a little notice of people who are interested. And I've had quite a few of those, but I'm curious if anyone has been doing outreach for volunteers during this time, or have the volunteers come to you and said, hey, I want to be here. All right, I'll ask it. How many people have done outreach for volunteers during this time? Great. And are there centers where volunteers have come to you, maybe, you know, word of mouth, and said, hey, I have time during this time, I want to come help out? Just curious. Thanks. Go ahead.
One of the ways that the Franciscan Center is really using our board volunteers is a lot of them have agreed to do virtual programs for us. So it's, and we started out by asking people to volunteer to do retreats and programs, but it ended up that they created such a number of people that we ended up being able to offer them a stipend as well. So it's kind of a quasi-volunteer, but and many of them want to donate it back anyway. But I think that group, and then I was mentioning, we had a food drive on Saturday, and there were a lot of volunteers came and with gloves and masks and helped to put the food in cars, and the money that was raised for Feeding Tampa Bay. So that was a very successful event that couldn't have happened without the volunteers.
Wow, that's wonderful.
I'd like to say that that's kind of what our experience has been at the Dominican Center. Normally we would have volunteers who would manage our bookstore, or who would come in and water our plants, you know, our indoor plants, or, you know, minor little things like that. But as COVID kind of came into play here, a lot of our volunteers have been more people who have done programming, who have rented a space there and who have said, what can we do to help the Dominican Center during this time? So I would agree with Maureen there in saying that some of them have offered to facilitate some of the programming that we've done. So I think that that's where we've seen the support of the community in wanting to participate in some way. And because we are offering online programming, that's where it's being used. But it might not be many, but it's just really nice to see that sense of appreciation that they have for the Dominican Center and for the work that we are doing, that they're there to support us.
That's great, Amanda. It reminds me of this conversation I've seen thread throughout community calls of opening up many portals into our spaces, or opening many opportunities, that one isn't just enough, that because people are so different and have different lived experiences or relationships to our retreat centers, how can we layer that? So maybe it's social media, maybe it's painting, maybe it's maintaining a garden, but making sure we're clear about all of the opportunities that could possibly happen.
Right. And that sense of the desire to be connected and feel connected, whether it's physically helping or helping online or writing letters or whatever it is. Go ahead.
My name is Jackie, and one of our volunteers before COVID, and will continue after COVID, she's brought in her grandkids, and they're volunteering. And these kids are, she wants them to get into that whole wonderful culture and relationship as a volunteer. And they're like in grade 7 and 8. But she wants it to build into that idea that it grows with us, So she's very good. And because of the experience of the center, she's able to pass it on to the next generation. So it's working.
Oh, I love that. I love that, Jackie. And that reminds me of the Waldorf kids. I had more teachers ask this time if their kids could come work on the trails. And that thing about the older kids teaching the younger kids, so that they can spend some time as they grow older doing that. Is there anything else? I'm going to cover one more area, and we'll have one more section of breakout groups.
And I just say on behalf of our group, it was a very good group. There are two things that struck me, 2 retreat centers, and I don't know, I think we need to keep this in prayer. Of course, had to leave go of staff because of the loss of income. And I think that's something, I just feel sad about that. And so I just share that. Those are things I think we need to keep in front of us. I mean, this is costing people jobs. And the second thing is there's some creative things between the group that met. There really good structured use of volunteers and recognizing volunteers. I don't mean to call out people, but Morningstar, Sue there, she has had some great ideas about volunteers and recognition. And Bernard, his community has a couple things with interns, young adult interns, and they help so many hours a week, plus they live in and learn the Benedictine life. Anyway, I just throw that out as I found our group rich with some experiences, and we're a small center in Rock Island, but I've tried to increase our volunteers. And one of the things I started that's been really successful when we were on site is prior to a retreat, I offer a soup supper. And so the retreatants come and they have a chance to socialize and have a light meal. And then the retreat starts. And it, especially if it's a quiet retreat or something, that's been popular. And I have 2 volunteers that do all of it. They do every meal and everything. And so I thought maybe that'd be helpful to other people because we're small and we don't have a lot of volunteer opportunities. and sometimes the volunteers aren't as follow through as well as you would like. So I found that they love to do it, and then I have other volunteers that want to help. So now we're going to have to rotate it a little bit so everybody has a chance to cook the soup. But you know, it's a challenge to figure out creative ways because we're small, the 15 rooms. We do have 100 acres like you were talking about, Marta, but our trails aren't as developed as yours, and our maintenance can mold them and they're fine. But anyway, for what it's worth, it was a good breakout group. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for all that.
Just a question to Sister Bobby. How large is your capacity?
We have 14 rooms with 2 twin beds and a hermitage.
Are you open currently?
No, we're not.
Oh,
we're not open. In fact, we have to remain closed through the winter, and I'm not surprised if it'll be through the spring. Currently, one of our sisters has to live there because she teaches, and we can't have her going in and out of the monastery. Mm-hmm. So, but we're small enough that we share some staff, like housekeeping. We share with the monastery. So the monastery's been able to make it work so we don't lose any of them because we're not open at the retreat center. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to raise the question around volunteers, and sometimes labor laws are not user-friendly relative to volunteers. I don't know if other people have run into this. We don't have volunteers currently, but when we have had volunteers, we have them for, let's say, a one-off moment or a special project that we're all working on together. But to have a consistent volunteer doing something that is a paid job for some other hospitality people is not legal. So it's tricky. And so I admire all the ways in which you can engage people and have them trade living for volunteering and so forth. But usually our ability to do what might be helpful is impeded by labor laws here in California anyway.
Sure. And it is tricky, as you said, and I really think it so often does take a specific person doing the volunteer coordinator engagement, which we didn't have at the Whidbey Institute for most of the time until 3 years ago when I was hired as the first volunteer coordinator. So there is so much involved.
Yeah.
Yes, and the legalities. Thank you all. I know Justine's been taking notes, and this is, I find it really wonderful to hear what you all are doing. And then another part of this that I want to bring in, we may not have time for breakout groups, but we can just discuss. Just another way of generating income. I wanted to share some things with you that we've been doing. One thing is to offer some individual retreats, which we've had many requests for over time, and we don't usually do. So we've opened it up to local people. We've had some board members come, and we had a local physician ask. She said she was going to do a meditation and she just wanted to be somewhere besides home. So for her, we offered one of our cabins with no food. She brought her food, and I think she stayed 4 nights for $60 a night. So it's not, it's nothing we're thinking we're going to make big money on, but it feels like a sweet trade almost, with opening it up to people to be able to be on the land. And then, just it helps. Sure, every dollar helps some. We've come up with Wednesday through Saturday individual retreats. And this is more at a higher paying rate because we need to have, I believe, 10 to 15 people on the land at once during these Wednesday through Saturday times so that our chef can come and make meals, and she won't lose money. but we're hoping that this will spread mostly word of mouth, and people could come in groups. They could be, we're hoping to really have essential workers, maybe local doctors, teachers, people on the front line, or equity workers, however groups, as we start out doing this, we're not quite sure how it'll work, but they could come in a group, you know, but they'll each have their own individual space. They can stay spaced apart. We have enough space for everyone to eat spaced apart if there are so few people. We're hoping that this will keep our chef involved, because, you know, she's trying to make a living and bring people to the Institute. So I can let you know how that goes. We're just starting that out, and we have a set price. We just decided we're not going to do anything. We're not going to divulge it all from our Wednesday through Saturday, so that it just makes it simple. This is what we offer, and we can see who's interested in coming. Let's see. We had some people ask us if they could rent one of our spaces. And again, I know this doesn't work if you don't have multiple spaces, but one of our houses for a couple people who are in great need of, associated with the local organic farm school, which is in the Maxwelton Valley, near where we are. And so we agreed to rent out the house, which, you know, in other times we wouldn't do, but it offers them a space to be on the land, and it'll bring in some monthly income for us as a regular rental. We haven't taken our programs online. Like I said, I know some of you have done that, and we've talked a lot about it, but we haven't. And I do think that's a wonderful way to keep the retreat center alive, have people finding out about it, and generating some income, which we haven't done. Let's see. But we have had a lot of time to be in meetings and do some deep dives creatively and imagining into the future of some things we don't want to do anymore, and some things that we want to hold up. So it's been a really generative time in that way that I don't think we would have had the space to do otherwise. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about our annual fundraiser. As I said before, we have a gala, which is usually in person. We use a lot of volunteers, volunteer help. We can't do it that way, as nobody can, but we are creating an online program in October. And so one of the things, and I was talking to somebody else about this on another call, we've thought about doing is having our chef make desserts and send a cupcake or a special dessert to people's houses. So as they watch the gala, they can enjoy the dessert. Another thing somebody was telling me is where she lives, they have a bar and restaurant and a bartender who's very, very creative. And so they're sending little boxes with cocktails and mixers to the people's houses. And then for the first part of the call, the bartender's going to come on the call, and everyone's going to have their little box, and he's going to show them how to mix the drink. And I thought that was a really creative idea. It could be it could be a non-alcoholic drink. There could be options. And then we could ask people to bring an appetizer with their drink. So just finding ways to, kind of stand out a little bit, have it be something different that people can remember and enjoy together. They're all drinking their cocktail together. Let's see. And then from our fundraising development staff person, she just wanted me to add that we're in the design stage of taking our annual fundraiser online. And we've been curious about the opportunity to attract new donors who don't normally attend the gala. They can come if it's online. And in discussion with Hollyhock, which is a retreat center up in the San Juan Islands, about their online fundraiser, they recommended hiring a live streaming contractor. So we reached out to someone who has worked with us in the past, who's very creative, has a lot of experience with online fundraising, and he has come on board. Whereas some of the funds we would have spent for our in-person fundraising gala, we can funnel into hiring him for the online streaming to make it a really top quality experience. And we're currently researching online fundraising event platforms. So she said, if anybody knows of one, please tell us any recommendations. So we've been having a lot of fun with the fundraiser, trying to think again of creative ways. And those are just some of the other ways we're generating income, or trying to generate income. And I see it's 11:40. Justine, what do you think about time?
Let's have a large group conversation. One, I want to say I didn't know how many people would want to talk about volunteer commitments and support. So I'm grateful that that conversation continued. And what it shows me doing RCC work is that these should be longer and continued conversations. I got a couple private messages too about ongoing free thinking space about generating revenue, which I also think speaks to our session a couple months ago at this point about scarcity versus abundance, as I was sharing with Marta earlier, that we are in this together and not competitors, but a collaborative, right? We are in collaboration with each other. So I think this can be an ongoing thread. So let's think about this as the start of that conversation in a large group. What are some creative ways you are all living into this space? And Marta, I can post your questions you had for small groups in the chat if that's going to inspire anyone to.
Sure, thank you. And I see some great information here in the chat. And I'm going to respond. How did you find a good online fundraiser? So the person to help us. We knew him from the past, and so we reached out to him, and I can certainly check with him if he's interested in doing more of this work. I'm not, let's see. Deborah asked the question, and then shall I check with him? And he may know of other people too, but he's, I wasn't on the first meeting with him, but I got excitement from everyone about his participation.
Yeah.
These are great suggestions. Thank you for the platforms, and I'll pass these on.
I'd love to respond to like question 2. How can you widen the circle of people you serve through diversifying your funding sources? So I'm not actually sure if Joni, our program manager, talked about this on a call recently, but one of the things that we're experimenting with this year is what we're calling our all access pass for online programs. And the idea is that our revenue is coming from selling the pass, not selling the program. So Naramata Center is all about creating community. So if you buy a pass, we want you to share it with your family. So everybody then comes together, participates in an online program, and then has a discussion about it. But the other piece around it is that we're also connecting with local communities and local churches. So the Penticton Senior Center's drop-in center, they're not bringing any of their people together right now because of COVID. So they have actually bought a pass. They're going to share it with their members and turn it into a fundraising for them, which is great. And then for us though, you know, how do you widen your circle? So now these people have a pass. They're going to send it out to their members. Their members are going to go, oh, the Naramata Center. Oh, what are they doing right now? And they're going to be involved in our programs. And so then we are widening our impact through our community partnerships. So it's all in sort of its research stage. We just launched it a couple of months ago. It'll be interesting to see, you know, how it sort of plays out over time. We've had probably five organizations pick up the pass at this point, and we have about 35 of them sold. So we always have about 40 online programs going on at any point in time, and we're just going to do another big push out. But it's good to widen our impact and also as fundraisers for our community partners at the same time. So stay tuned. We'll let you know how it goes.
It's a wonderful idea. I think, did you talk about that in another call?
I think it was Joni might have talked about it. Yeah, we're really excited about it. So we're just talking about it again. There we go.
I'm glad, because I was actually trying to remember. I was like, who was talking about the past? That's a wonderful idea. Thank you. Yeah, let us know how it goes.
One of the things that I'm so aware of is the people that are coming to the Zoom programs are people who can't come anymore physically, a lot of them, to the center for various reasons, either their age or health, or also their distance. We had a program the other day that I think there was someone from, no, that was a different class, but people from all over the country. We have a recovery mini retreat once a month that used to always meet with food and dinner, and putting it online. There's 150 people signed up for it from all over the country. So it would be people that would normally not be able to attend one of those mini retreats. So that's another whole way to diversify our audiences and hopefully keep them, because I believe the future is going to be hybrid myself.
I think so too. I'm curious, Maureen, do they bring their dinners and eat? Like, is it a time when you eat together and have the retreat, or is it not?
I'll suggest it to them. It's a great idea.
I'd be interested in knowing how you broadly circulate the information about your programs in order to get that wider circle. And that would apply to anybody, because there's such richness available, and we want to be sure we extend beyond the known group to new people.
For us, it's tapping into different social media platforms, so our Facebook, Instagram, any of our digital marketing. But then it's also old school, on the ground, pick up the phone, talk to the organizations, go and meet with them safely at a safe distance, and have conversations, and reaching out to our local community associations. So just anything that we can use to connect, and then also using our board. So one of the things that we actually challenged the board was, we're going to say, okay, we want to sell X number of passes. Each board member, please reach out to your own community and sell 5. So using our board as fundraisers at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I'm curious about all of those that are doing online programming. When you are bringing presenters in, because some of these have to be facilitated, right, depending on the topic of the program, how are you all managing or working with them as it pertains to the stipends?
Yeah, I've got some feedback on that, and that was the question that I was walking with all through April and May. How on earth are places doing that? And at first, it seems like what the wisdom that I found that worked for me was go ahead and dive in and start charging. There were a couple places that I knew, and we also decided, right, especially at the height of COVID, let's just get some free programming out there, because my gosh, people just need support. And the more I got feedback from people and checked what other places are doing, the more it was, it seemed very comfortable actually to start charging. We did have to swallow a few stipends and just stipend them out of the general operation of the retreat center instead of from those fees. But we've started charging fees now, and people are generally paying for it. I did make the decision to keep up with free, very small, but very frequent YouTube and Instagram, and not as much Instagram, Facebook and YouTube, little miniature reflections, so that people would be served no matter what their income level. And we always offer scholarships. So we started basically charging right away. And a colleague of mine just finished a little study. In fact, some of you she might have reached out to look at what are places across the country and into Canada actually, what are places charging per hour of online programming. And it turns out she found basically $7 an hour is what people are charging. She did all this research, it was great. But about $7 an hour. So like a 3-hour morning program, people are charging about, places, retreat centers are charging about $20 or $25. So if that's any help, of course, we don't always know how many people are going to be signing up for different programs, but that's just been my experience, Yolanda. I hope it's helpful.
It is, Clara, thank you. I just kind of, you get an answer from one thing and it kind of leads you into another thought. I have another thought. I'm thinking about the amount of programs Dominican Center used to offer, as Susan said, at any time, any given season, 40 programs. We've scaled down a lot. We don't want to scale. We want to make sure it's sustainable. So I am curious about, we we want to make it so that enough people come to these programs where we do have revenue, but we are not thinking about offering 40 programs online now and bringing everything online. I think it is, one, too much work to do, and two, it's almost like I have felt sometimes programs are competing with one another, whereas people are having to pick and choose. I really want to go to this program, but I don't know if I want to miss out on this other one, right? So, what have you all done to try to balance that?
Can I respond? Your thought, Yolanda, is right up my valley. I've had people say, these are wonderful programs, and I have to pick and choose. I want to come to all of them. I said, well, come to all of them and pay for what you can, and we'll cover the rest. But going online, I'm struggling with that right now, how to do this. And some of the presenters that I have that we're going to come on site and want to do it online are still charging quite a bit, because it's not any travel, but they still have preparation to do. But I also use online resources. I don't know if you've heard of Emmaus Productions, and I bought videos through Learn25 and things. Like I'm going to offer a thing on Thomas Merton, but it's not me doing it. It's going to be a biographer of Thomas Merton doing it, but I'm using the video and then follow up with discussion. And I'm looking to do some of those, because we can't really afford to bring in a lot of expensive people right now, nor do we ever. I'm just saying, I'm trying to look on online and do some selective programming that way. And programs I have offered so far that I'm personally doing have been successful. That might be 4 in a month, and I want to ramp that up a little bit, but I don't want to overdo it. So I really struggle with how best to do online. And anyway, I'm using some videos, like I said, and then I do have some live people, but you don't, and I charge for the online programs, and people pay, and then sometimes they don't pay, but we have funds to cover that. But I think your good question is not to overdo it. And I tend to be a programmer at heart, and everything I want to learn more about, I want to do it with other people. And so I have to balance that out. But there's a lot of good online resources that you can use to supplement discussion. And for me, because I have 2 hats, I'm administrator, assistant administrator of our community, sub-prioress, and also director of Bennett House. I don't have the time right now to plan a lot. And I'm the only person that does programs for our retreat center from our community. So I've turned to some online things that would be good. I don't know if that's helpful, but it's my 2 cents.
It does. Thank you, sister.
I think I'll speak to just the 40 programs, just so we don't anticipate, because it is a lot of programs. You're right. You're absolutely, it's a lot. We find that we're completely comfortable like canceling them also. So it's like we have a price point, we have our speaker fees, our program leader fees. If we don't hit it, we have contracts with our program leaders. If we don't hit our registration for the programs, then we're quite comfortable either deferring it or canceling the program. So when you sign up, you also know that we're looking for X number of people in this program. And part of the research will be able to next year see which ones automatically fill up and which ones we're getting no interest from at all. And that will direct us sort of into the future. And then I love the idea of the conversations, because they're right, you're right, there's so many resources out there. That becomes what you're offering, right? It's not the online program, it's the ability to be in community with each other after the program and have the conversation. And when you charge for it, people will show up, usually, even if it's an administration fee.
We don't organize sessions to compete with one another. We have one retreat at a time. For the moment, we're probably doing one a week. We could probably amp that up to one in the weekend and one during the week time. But it's a way of enabling our constituency to participate in whatever they want to do, and they don't have to make difficult choices. The way we ask people to pay a fee, but we actually don't monitor that. People enroll themselves on our website, and it automatically creates their enrollment in Zoom. They get the link on Zoom, and then they're invited to make a donation. And we ask for a $15 donation per session. And we tell our providers that they will get 70% of whatever we collect. So we don't have an agreed stipend, which creates an incentive also for them to reach out to their own constituencies and drum up support for their retreat.
Great suggestions. I love hearing what you all are doing. Thank you.
Marta, I see a couple hands up. I also want to be mindful of time, just given that we have about 3 minutes left. If you want to put something in the chat, I'm gonna be that person. If you want to put something in the chat, please do that. Marta, do you want to close this out and I'll end with what's ahead?
Sure. No, I just really appreciate the opportunity to be here and share some of the things that we're doing and hear what you all are doing. As usual, these calls are really resourceful and beneficial and inspiring. So thank you so much. Feel free to reach out too. I'll just put my work email in the chat if you have any other questions.
Great. And I hope, because I'm about to cut you off, I hope all of you engage in these conversations offline. These community calls are good check-ins with everyone. But if you found an idea valuable and you wanted to continue that, please exchange contact information. You can put it in the chat now and we can pick it up as we go. But I hope, just like Martin did, thank you for that. And thank you so much for the time you've spent in crafting this space and holding us with what you've been doing at Whidbey Institute. All of you had such a wealth of knowledge of dreams, realities, and where those two meet in your retreat centers. And I just want to say before we end that the next two that are coming up on September 8th and September 22nd. So September 8th is a community call on scenarios. So let's say we have to think about closing. What does that look like? What does it look like to give away our land? What does it look like to continue online programming? Really dreaming into the reality that we're faced with. And then September 22nd is a conversation about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. We've thread that through several conversations, but we're really going to dedicate some time to, one, doing some personal reflection, and two, how do our retreat centers or organizations as institutions work to be anti-racist and dismantle white supremacy. I'm really excited. Jining Wu will be helping us with that, and Ben and I will be holding the space. In the last minute we do have, if you have suggestions for community calls in October, if it's, yes, I want to have another conversation about diversifying revenue, please write that into the chat so we know what the needs are Ben and I are really kind of navigating this journey, but we need to hear from you what the certain needs of your retreat center are. And that can also be an email to me. So I'll include my email in the chat box, just like Marta did. But thank you all so much for being with us this Tuesday, and we'll see you in a couple weeks at the next call.